Welcome to Hanging Out with Robert, that's me. This video contains things that I tinker with throughout the day. For step-by-step detailed instructions of those tasks, you can click on the links in the comment section below. I plan on leaving this video accessible for about 30 days. After that, you can view it through my Patreon account. This video also has tips and tricks that I've learned over the years. So, thank you very much for watching. Out here in Pick and Pull. What town is this?
This is
Pull Apart.
Stafford,
Virginia. Somebody dropped a T5 out here. Unfortunately, it was an accident. Brand freaking new, fresh Bilstein struts all the way around. Unfortunately for you guys, they will not be here in 30 minutes. So I'm gonna go get a wheelbarrow, get the tools, and jerk these off of here. Kicking off the day in the Fredricksburgh, Virginia area. Going to be helping Cleve with his S70 here. He's got a couple things stopping him from passing emissions. They said his fog lights have to be working. His defrost needs to be working. And one other thing is going on, and he's got a check engine light. So we're going to investigate what those issues are, get this stuff so that it can pass emissions, and go from there. I'm not sure why his fog lights wouldn't be working, but that may be as simple as a fuse. We're going to replace the turbo on this car and do several other things. He's got some stuff that's been going on since I left here last time. The door panel, he thinks there's a speaker bad, which I doubt. He went about getting at the speaker the wrong way. He's got stuff going on with his center console, a few other things. So let's dig in, see if we can help him get this car to pass emissions and go from there. First off, his hood's not popping open, so I don't think he's done that fix for that. Not sure why he still has a green door on a blue car. I may get this thing off of this ramps pulling back up because my passenger tire is not in the middle of them. But I usually don't worry about that, but since I'll be under there a lot, I'll probably do that. Turbo Tony told Cleve he needed to change his oil service line, which I've never seen any of those gummed up on a Volvo, so we'll probably pull that, cut that off, so we can verify that these Volvo lines on these cars are clear. He's concerned about him getting the proper oil supply, especially on the worn out turbo. So let's pull his car back off, put it back on, and check out these fog lights real quick. Oil change reminder and check engine light. I don't know if Cleve knows the check engine light's on. Fog lights are on, not working. Let's pop the hood, check the fuse. Fuse 17 says front fog lamps and stop lamps. So it appears that if your brake lights are out, your fog lights are out. I don't think that's the issue. So I'm gonna get an ohm meter out and check the fog light bulbs and go from there. Let me check this fuse as well, 17. Oh, how nice. Fog light wiring exposed. Who knows what else is going on with that, or if that's even the right plug going to that stuff. So let me go ahead and see if the bulbs are good. Well, it looks like the bulb is testing good on the ohm meter. It's not saying open loop on the ohm setting. So let me see if it tests right in the socket. That bulb socket seemed a little bad. It's not holding the light in it. One of the ones we got from the junkyard, the bulb's actually blown out, but the socket's a little better. It'll at least hold the light bulb. So I'm gonna stick a screwdriver down there and close that a little bit to hold that light bulb better. Put the good light bulb in there and see if it works. Well, looking down the barrel of the plug, that connector is burned up. maybe that has something to do with it. So let me check the other side, see what's going on over there. It is getting power to this green wire with the orange stripe. So let me check the other side, see what's going on, and probably go get one of these connectors from the salvage yard. Passenger side was missing a bulb. Install the bulb. That side's fixed. So solve that mystery. Hit that other switch. Hit the other switch.
Already did.
Alright, so
The headlights need to be on?
they are on.
The headlights are on, okay.
Alright, hold on a second. Good Lord. Is the switch on? The headlight switch on? Alright, thank you. Alright, now the switch is on and both of them are working. Driver's side and passenger side. Let's move on to the next job. Got that all taped up and secure, and see oil on this air pump under here. A lot of oil on this turbo tube, which probably means this turbo is leaking a lot of oil. And that's one of the things we're replacing. And you see the weep hole on the intercooler has evidence of oil coming out of it too. Last time I checked this turbo, it had some play in it, in and out play. So we're going to drain some coolant, drain the oil, and get this turbo out. In this video, I want to tell you how to tune up your turbo system in your car. Many cars have turbochargers, especially vehicles built after 2015. Turbochargers make smaller engines produce more power, more efficiency, better fuel economy than the larger engines that do not have turbochargers. They call them naturally aspired. So I want to help you identify things in the turbo system on your vehicle that may need to be serviced to help it run efficiently. Now, some vehicles have turbochargers that wear out. Some wear out sooner than others, and it largely depends on how you treat it. So there's a video linked in the comments section below that tells you how to treat your vehicle that has a turbocharged engine so that you don't wear that turbocharger out prematurely. I've seen some last and go out in 70,000 miles. I've seen some last 300,000. I replaced mine on my vehicle at about 290. It just was not producing the boost that it once did. So first thing you may want to do to know if your turbo is worn out is install a temporary boost gauge. There's a video linked in the comments below to show you how to install a boost gauge. And one of the first things you want to do is service all of the vacuum and turbo piping that goes to it. After you know all that stuff's in good shape, test your turbo to see if it's performing well. Let's get started identifying the turbocharger, the vacuum lines, the pressure tubing, charge pipe stuff that's connected to it. Get that stuff serviced and then test the turbo to see if it's producing the proper boost, to see if it needs to be replaced. One of the surefire ways to know if your turbocharger is worn out is that it's not producing boost. What causes a turbocharger to work properly is exhaust gases is sent through the turbocharger. It spins the turbine, which is linked to a shaft that turns the compressor wheel or the impeller. As that turns, it pressurizes the intake of the car, letting it suck in more air, burn more gas, produce more power. Now, the faster that turbocharger turns, the more pressure it can deliver to that intake. As your turbo gets worn, builds up carbon on the inside of it, shaft gets worn out, seals gets worn out, stuff like that, it decreases the ability for that turbocharger to spin at a faster speed. Let's just say, for an example, a turbocharger producing 8 pounds of boost may spin at 150,000 revolutions to produce that 8 pounds of boost. As it gets older, it may not be able to spin fast enough to produce that boost. When it's working properly, it may be capable of maintaining 12 pounds of boost at 200,000 rounds per hour. It's spinning fast. At the rate that your car's computer is programmed to pressurize that intake system is what you need to be able to maintain. And the point is, if your turbocharger is getting weak, it may not be able to produce the power that it's supposed to, or the pressure it's programmed to. And as it continues to struggle to do that, it will produce less and less power, be less and less efficient in your car's function, and that will get to a point where it'll start smoking, it'll start wearing out more, and then it'll eventually not produce any boost at all. It'll be leaking oil and not producing pressure, and it may even be smoking, and I've seen them even break, the shaft break on them. And when that happens, you can barely move the car at all, because the car is designed to work with that turbocharger. It's like the lung system to the engine's function and the air intake. You poke a hole in the lung, it's like stabbing a person in the lung. They suffocate and can't function. So you want that turbocharger to be working and working properly, and you want to service it or replace it before it leaves you stranded on the side of the road. In this box we have a turbocharger that was rebuilt and actually I think restructured by A1 Turbo Industries. Tony down there, he's been in the turbo rebuilding business for many years. He took a Volvo turbocharger, rebuilt it to function as new or better than new. He took the exhaust flange off of it. This is the exhaust flange. They call it, the wastegate is built into it. This is the intake housing. This is the wastegate actuator. It's pressurized and it causes the wastegate inside there to open and close. When that wastegate is closed, it allows all of the exhaust gases to come through that turbine wheel and pressurize the intake system. When the car senses that there's enough pressure in there to functionally run at the power demand you're at, it'll pressurize this wastegate actuator, extend this rod, open this little flap in here, this wastegate, and allow air to bleed by that turbine, which slows down the speed of the turbo and allows it to maintain a certain speed and pressure. So this one has been rebuilt. I think this turbine wheel may be an upgrade. I was told this inlet wheel is also an upgrade. Turbos are rated by a couple things. The CHRA, which is the heart of the turbo, the shaft and everything goes through there. It has the turbine wheel on the back, the inlet wheel on the front. And when you're checking these for serviceability, you find your inlet pipe. Here's the air box where the air filter is. Here's the inlet pipe that goes down and feeds into this part of the turbo. So you put your finger in there, you try to wiggle this up and down with your finger. When it's installed in the car, it has oil and coolant in it. There's oil line passages, coolant line passages. That should be nice and tight. It should not wiggle. You shouldn't be able to click it against the frame or housing of the turbo. It should spin nice and easy. As you can see that, it spins there. You can also spin it when it's out of the car from the back. It spins nice and easy. You should not be able to pull it in and out. This one supposedly has a larger inlet, I believe. We'll check that with the caliper and may compare them side by side before we put them in. And if you need a turbo replacement, This is an entire unit, and if you get it from a reputable place that rebuilt it, it will have this already calibrated to the wastegate. So the only thing you really have to do is drain the coolant, drain the oil, unbolt the one that's in there, bolt in this one with your coolant lines, your exhaust, your inlet piping, your charge piping, and fire it up, ready to go. You want to pressurize the oil system before you start the car. You don't want the car started until you know oil pressure has pressurized this turbo, because you run a turbo for 4 or 5 seconds without any oil or coolant in there, you can damage it right off the bat. So you want to pressurize it with oil by cranking it without it starting. Nice slow cranking will pressurize the oil system. Then you fire it up. Once you got the car going, you really don't have a break-in period for a turbo. You can let it rip, but treat it as explained in the link in the comment section below. It's really simple to tune up or service, per se, your turbocharged system. You have vacuum lines that monitor the pressure in the turbo and control your wastegate and provide a means for overpressure bleed off. Some people call it the bypass, some people call it the blow off. Then you have your pressure tubing, which is after the turbo inlet and sends the pressure to the intake manifold. And then you have the turbo itself that includes the exhaust flange and the wastegate in there. Some turbos don't have the exhaust flange that you can unbolt from the exhaust manifold, and it is part of the exhaust manifold, which makes it more complicated to service. Now, if they have this clamp here, you can take it apart and separate the exhaust manifold or exhaust flange from the CHRA of the turbo, which some people do. That's what I normally do, because I normally don't service my exhaust flange. Very rarely wear out. If they're aftermarket or cheap, they'll wear out. If they're OEM good quality ones, they may last a very long time. Now here is the inlet housing where your intake comes in here. So you want to make sure the tube from your air box going down to your intake housing is in good condition. I've seen those things split, cracked, over tightened the clamp, got them all busted up, and this is a good source of the vacuum coming off the air box where your air filter is. And if that's not sealed properly, your computer may not be able to measure the pressure or vacuum on that inlet tube. So you want that inlet pipe to be in good shape. Thing you see down here is a pressure tube. This nipple measures the pressure coming after your compressor wheel. It's pressurizing this. It sends that same pressure that's coming out of this turbo into a little turbo control valve, and the computer reads that pressure, and that reading tells the computer when to bypass air from that and send it to your wastegate actuator, so your wastegate actuator can open and close, bleed off exhaust gases and pressure from the turbo, so that the turbo doesn't spin faster than it needs to. So that same valve that this vacuum line hooks to has a different port that connects to your wastegate actuator. And then this here is a little bleed off valve. It's used to bleed off excessive pressure from the charge system, the pressurized air, mostly when you let your foot off the gas. When you let your foot off the gas, the throttle closes. All of the air that's coming through here, this turbo's still spinning, producing boost. So let's say you're on the highway going around a vehicle. You might have full throttle. You got the turbo spooled up. It's pressurizing 10 psi, and all of a sudden, bam, you close the throttle. All of this air feeds right into the throttle. You close that throttle, this has to spin down. That might take a second or two. And that couple of seconds that it takes to slow this turbo down while it was producing 10 psi, it'll cause pressure to build up 12 psi, 14 psi, 18 psi. Well, that's going nowhere. While this turbo's slowing down, it'll trigger this relief valve and blow this turbo pressure out of here, and this is normally dumped into the intake manifold for emissions purposes. Some people install what's called a blow-off valve. It'll discharge that air into the atmosphere and make a nice sound for them. But on this particular turbo, it's designed to take that excessive pressure, blow it through a diaphragm here. This feeds into the intake manifold, dump that air into the intake manifold. So you want to make sure the vacuum tube coming in here is in great shape. The vacuum tube coming here, great shape. Vacuum tube coming here, great shape. I'm not sure the diameter of these, but this may be outside diameter 5 millimeters. This may be 5 millimeters. This may be 4. So you may need a couple different sizes of vacuum lines. So let's go ahead, pull the air box out of the way so we can inspect the inlet tubing, and then inspect these 3 vacuum lines, make sure they're serviceable. Then after that, we'll remove the charge piping and inspect those tubes and pipes to make sure that they're in good shape, because if they're deteriorated from a bad turbo, oil leak, stuff like that, they will deteriorate those vacuum tubing or those pressure tubings, and then you can have a boost leak. So you don't want that either. But we're going to start with these couple of vacuum lines. So the first thing we're going to do is disconnect the air box, get it out of the way, take this inlet tube off so that we can inspect it and get it out of the way so we can check those vacuum lines and start the removal process on this turbo replacement. Now your turbo, of course, again, it has your exhaust side, the turbine side, and it has the intake side, the compressor wheel side. And inside the CHRA, there's a set of seals on both sides. If the seals are gone on the exhaust side, it'll blow oil right down the exhaust. If the seals are gone on your compressor wheel side, it may suck oil up through your turbocharged piping that goes through your intercooler and into your throttle body, and then your piping will be oil saturated going from your turbo into your intake manifold. So this is a sign that this turbo is blowing oil out of the compressor side. With the air box removed, you can see a couple of these lines. This line here, this is the turbo control valve. It monitors the turbo pressure and activates pressure to open the wastegate actuator. As you can see, that hose is very deteriorated on that port. Here's another thing you got to be aware of. Somebody replaced a vacuum line here. They used some kind of hose that was so stiff and hard, it broke the nipple off of the intake tube. Then the hose has a kink in it here, mainly because of the type of hose it is. Not good for turbo application. It's got a kink there. You don't want that. That's going to your waste. And then he skipped the hose here. Most important one, going down to the bottom of the turbo. Now there's colors on this one. It's color coded. You have a yellow, a red, and the blue. The blue goes to the air tube to monitor the inlet pressure. The yellow goes to the wastegate actuator, and the red goes to the turbo charge pressure to monitor that. So sometimes you can see these marks on here, sometimes you can't. We'll pull this out and look closer to look for those markings, but I don't see any of them on this one. But we do see a deteriorated line. So I'm gonna get to the other side of this, pull that clamp down there to pull this inlet tube out. I got another 2 vacuum connections to disconnect. All right, we got the turbos out side by side. This is what a bad leaking one looks like. I'm gonna push this in, and when I put my hand back here, you'll see the play in and out when I push it. So it's pretty loose. You see it moving in and out. And probably can't spool as much. It has a rich coat, so it may be the turbo's not supplying enough pressure. We measured this in here. It was about 43 here and 47 here. So this is a smaller inlet compressor wheel on it. So let's check and see what the exhaust side looks like. This one has 12 blades on it, and the new improved rebuilt one has 9. So we should have better spooling. We're gonna go ahead and put this thing in place, keep this show on the road. We got a new oil line. I got it almost tightened. I'm gonna put it on the turbo before I tighten it. We got new washers for these 2. Got new drain stuff for it. We put a R manifold on here. We are ready to drop this in. Oh, I need to get that coolant line on there before I slide this turbo in. So let me swap that coolant line over and drop this turbo in. If you feel that this information was useful, please like it and share it with your social media friends. You can subscribe to my channel so that you will get notifications of future videos that I post. You can follow me on Twitter, and if you need to contact me directly, please visit my website. And if you have any questions, leave them below, and someone or myself will reply to them. Again, thank you very much for watching.